From the high desert and the great American Southwest, I bid you all good evening or good morning and welcome to Coast, AM PM. First or last hour, as the case may be. Yes, as promised, Richard Hoagland is here. By the skin of his or our teeth. We just got him before showtime. And he'll be here in just a moment. And he's, of course, author of Monuments of Mars. And an awful lot more these days, and he's got something to say about the moon. And so we'll be talking with Richard Hoagland in just a moment. Let us go back east. I forget where he is. I think New York. Where are you, Richard? No, hold on, Richard. Just hold on. Let me get you on another line here. And let's see. Here. Richard, where are you anyway?
Weehawken, New Jersey.
Weehawken, New Jersey. All right, a lot of people don't know who Richard Hoagland is. We've got a lot of new affiliates, that sort of thing, Richard. So, without my having the bio, tell us yourself. Who are you?
Well, let's see. I'm currently leader of a research project called the Mars Mission, which involves a range of astronomers, scientists of persuasions ranging from geology to image processing to mathematicians, anthropologists, even some artists and psychologists. And what we're trying to do is to figure out a set of objects discovered on a set of NASA images about 20 years ago, taken of the planet Mars by the unmanned Viking mission. And it's kind of the first extraterrestrial archaeological research project in history, I guess you could say. Before that, I was the head of astronomy departments at museums. I was at the Hayden Planetarium in New York. I've been a NASA consultant. I've been a consultant to Walter Cronkite, CBS News, science advisor at CNN. That basically covers it.
Very impressive credentials.
And last year, I cannot forget this, I was awarded the Engström Medal for Excellence in Science for the first time internationally by the Engström Institute in Stockholm, Sweden.
Very good. All right, Richard, I want you to answer critic. I heard an earlier talk show host say that he regards this sort of thing as fantasy. When you encounter a critic like that, what do you say? I mean, besides your credentials, which are impeccable, what do you say to somebody who makes that kind of a charge?
Well, I point them toward the New York Times for July 20th, 1969, which finally apologized to Robert Goddard for calling him some 50 years before a fantasy visionary who was not grounded in science. Everyone who tries to do something that has never been done before is accused of being slightly, non-anchored in reality.
Whacked out.
And, you just have to take that along with the rest because ultimately it's the evidence which will prove you right or wrong. And, about 10 years ago when I began this, I wouldn't have given a prayer that we would be proven right maybe within my lifetime because there were no missions going back to Mars. There was no general scientific consensus that there was any possibility of artifacts in the solar system. It was an extremely isolated position. Now we have, hundreds of scientists who have joined us in various ways. We've had peer review. We've been awarded medals. NASA has invited us 5 times. I've been asked to speak at the United Nations. I think the trend curve speaks for itself, Mark.
I think you're right. It certainly does. And we'll leave that one right there. All right. Richard, I've got a computer, and recently I went up on America Online, got a GIF reader, and got GIF pictures, several of them, of the monuments on Mars, of the face on Mars. And I've been looking very carefully, as best I can. Got a nice high-resolution monitor. I must tell you, that face looks like a face. Yeah, I mean, it really looks like a face, Richard. I don't know that I've got enough detail to see some of the other objects. I can see surrounding objects, but I don't know that I can make out, with the detail of the picture I have, enough detail to call them any specific structures.
Okay.
Are they harder to, in other words, how do you come up with that? Obviously, you've got more sophisticated techniques than I guess I do.
Well, it's not technique, it's basically technology and algorithms. These photographs were taken roughly a generation ago.
Right.
Imagine what has happened in the computer world in a generation. A generation in the world of software, in the world of desktop computers, in the world of microprocessing, has been almost, as much a revolution as from the first Wright brothers airplane to the Apollo spacecraft going to the moon. I mean, we have literally come up factors of thousands in, computer speed. We've gone up factors of millions in computer storage capability, in the number of image processing operations that can be done per second, MIPS as they're called.
Right.
You have more computer power on your desk part now in 1994, and I've checked this with an engineer the other day because as we get into the discussion on the new part of our research, you'll see why this is very, very, very relevant. An ordinary, let's say, half meg hard disk, 30 megahertz DOS-based system is more computer power in one machine on a desk than all of NASA had 30 years ago.
That's incredible.
One machine.
That really is incredible. One little machine. I've got a 40.
All of NASA spread all over the country in a dozen centers had just 30 years ago, a little over a generation. So when you look at these images, what you have to understand is that they were recorded as digital binary information on magnetic tape, sent back to Earth, recorded here on Earth.
Sure.
And any of the advances which have been brought in the way of seeing things on these images is not because we're making up stuff, but because the algorithms allow you to reach down deeper and deeper into the noise and extract that last bit of signal. And the other objects that are around the signal, in fact, they're several miles away. You have to look to the west, all right?
Yes.
Those geometric, angular-looking things that look very pyramidal, they will be brought out by a combination of noise suppression algorithms and things like sharpening, unsharp masking, a variety of techniques now that everyone has access to that literally only a handful of the world's most sophisticated computer programmers could have done 30 years ago. The democratization of this technology is absolutely incredible. It's the beginning of the superhighway, and what you're looking at is only the beginning of that highway for you, so keep going.
All right. Well, my question is, without yet going into what is on the moon, how does the imaging quality of the photos we've received from the moon compare to what I'm seeing from Mars?
Now let me see if I understand your
In other words, we just took the pictures on the moon recently, and I'm asking about
You mean Clementine?
Clementine, yes. I'm asking about the imaging of those pictures versus the imaging we got from Mars.
Okay. All right, we need to go into a little bit of various technologies. All right. The images from Mars were acquired with what Brian O'Leary told me at breakfast the other morning was the most infernal idiocy ever turned to astronomy invented by man, namely the image Vidicon camera. He was the deputy team leader on Mariner 10 that went to Mercury and Venus, and he had a devil of a time with the technology. We were kind of comparing notes in Albuquerque the other morning when I was down there for a conference.
Mm-hmm.
The same kind of camera was flown during Viking to Mars. An imaging Vidicon is a little pencil, actually cigarette-sized vacuum tube which writes an image on the front faceplate of the tube by means of an electrical current, a beam of electrons, and various magnetic fields.
Or put another way, it's a TV camera.
It's a very tiny, but it's a vacuum tube TV camera.
Right.
Now, the modern TV cameras that you have in your camcorders,
Yes.
and you have in the studio cameras, top of the line, and you have in your space mission, those are not Vidicons. Those are solid-state CCDs, charge-coupled devices. They're chips.
Right.
Look, Ma, no moving parts, no vacuum tubes. It's all done with chips. The chip camera is probably 1,000 to 10,000 times more sensitive. It is 100,000 times more linear, meaning the light lightest and darkest things it can photograph and not overexpose or underexpose
Right.
is enormous compared to the... bottom line is, the modern technology is 1,000 times better than what was sent to Mars.
Wow.
That's the technology now. That's not counting the imaging algorithms and the sophisticated mathematical techniques of enhancing, shading, contrast, stretching, all those things that you do with images once they come home. Now, why is the technology important? Because you're only as good as your front end. You know, if you have a lousy radio, Art, I don't care how good a signal you're putting out. If the radio is bad, we're going to sound terrible tonight in somebody's living room, right?
It's true, yes.
Whereas if you have a $2,000 stereo receiver, it's almost as if we had moved in.
That's right. That's exactly right.
Well, that's the comparison.
All right, well then here's the question. If we had today's technology, the technology available on Clementine, and it had been in roughly the same place taking the same photographs of Mars, would there be much of an argument about what we were seeing?
I would have had a lot easier time.
A lot easier time.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. Because the noise levels would have been lower, the number of pictures would have been vastly superior, the comparisons, we could have had color, we could have had stereo, we could have had multiple angles. Now, this problem would have been a non-problem. We would have known or not known within hours of those images coming back, provided, again, that the politics within NASA were honest, and that's a completely separate discussion. But technologically, no. If we had CCD imaging on Viking, the face on Mars would be a resolved mystery tonight.
All right, I thought so. Now, this came to me in a fax from somebody at Cairo News, KIRO, up in Seattle. It says Russian and U.S. Mars mission planners are meeting in Jet Propulsion Lab in Pasadena, according to Aviation Week, to better define U.S.-Russian participation in a proposed space exploration program to be called Mars Together. France, Germany, and Italy are also considering joining in the new 1998 unmanned mission to Mars. What do you know about that?
Well, I know the Russians were supposed to launch this year. In fact, we were kind of hoping that they would get a look at Cydonia, that they may even land one of their mini rovers, and it was delayed. It's been delayed now 2 years to 1996. This is part of the ongoing discussion between NASA and the European space community, and of course the Russians have now joined the European space community. For plans after, 96, the next opportunity is 98. We get an opportunity to go to Mars roughly every 2 years. So this is part of, what we get to see in public. What really is driving this, I basically could speculate, but I have no direct knowledge.
All right.
In other words, I don't know whether there is some plan to investigate the Cydonia objects quietly together, or they don't even know they're there, or they're pretending they're not there. In other words, I cannot speculate.
All right. Before we get to the moon again, and I'm delaying this, I want a little bit of background on NASA. I mean, you worked for NASA, and now you're in contention with NASA. And why is that? I mean, you worked for the organization, and now you're turning around, in essence, and saying, gee, what a bunch of liars.
Well, let me put that hopefully in a correct perspective. I was a NASA consultant. I was a NASA fan from the beginning. I mean, when I was at the museum in Springfield in 1964, I created a transcontinental project between the Museum of Science in Springfield and the Jet Propulsion Laboratory in Pasadena with an NBC affiliate named WTIC in Hartford, Connecticut. It was owned by the Travelers Insurance Company. We did an all-night program with everyone from Carl Sagan to Alan Hynek. We broadcast the program by laser as an experimental technology for communication, foreshadowing ultimately someday what would be occurring across the solar system, or between the moon and Earth, or Mars and Earth, and all that. The program was nominated for a Peabody, and the occasion was the first flyby of the Mariner 4 spacecraft past Mars in July of 1965. So I cannot say that I was an antagonist at the beginning, but what I have become is a critic because the agency has drifted away from the charter. When you go back and look at how NASA was formed in 1958 as a unique government agency that was to be of service of, by, for the people of the United States, if you read the charter, it says in one paragraph that there shall be all appropriate and wide of the process and results of NASA's activities in the field of science and inquiry in the universe, et cetera, et cetera. And what we have found, and what has been documented not only by our own efforts, but by the efforts of people like Dr. Stan McDaniel, is that somehow NASA is not operating today in consonance with its charter. Now, most of the people in NASA, 99.9%, who are, heroic, pioneering, who believe in the charter, they would be appalled if they had done their homework and found what we have found. So it's not that I'm opposed to NASA. What I'm opposed to is the tiny handful of people who, over the last 30 years, as we are now unfortunately able to document, have caused the agency to diverge more and more from its ideals, its goals, its vision, its principles, its ethics, on which the American people have depended. And we're doing this on behalf not only of people who care about NASA, but the people within the agency who are being sold down the river along with the rest of them.
Richard, what influence caused this change, do you think?
Fear. If you read a document called the Brookings Report, which we have unearthed now as part of our political activity, you find that literally as NASA was being created in 1958-59, there was a general effort by the agency to reach out to the scientific community and to gather experts from a variety of fields, anthropologists, economists, lawyers, politicians, industrialists, whatever, and to ask them, how do we do this, boys and girls? How do we create the space agency, and what should we do, and what would the impact be back on the American society? This study, which is available from federal archives all over the country, which was submitted by NASA to Congress in 1961, in April of 1961, by the then new Kennedy administration, turns out to have contained within it what I have now called the ticking time bomb, the kind of logical paradox. Because on the one hand, NASA charter called for it to be the most open, democratized agency in the history of the federal government, in the history of this republic. In this Brookings report, there is a section dealing with extraterrestrial intelligence, extraterrestrial life. And in that section, NASA received recommendations that if it ever found artifacts, and it was expected that it might find, as part of its unmanned space activities, robots like Viking, or lunar orbiter or surveyor or other missions out across the solar system,
Yes.
it might find artifacts. And on page 215, this document predicts that. It says that because of the potential for anthropological devastation, the fact that previous civilizations on Earth, when they have been forced to confront suddenly as advanced cultures completely above and beyond them, that they have disintegrated, it recommended that serious consideration be given to simply not revealing this data, to withholding this information from the American people and thereby from the rest of the world.
Oh my God, that's the equivalent of an unconstitutional act. In fact, the parallel, Richard, to what has occurred to our own Constitution since its penning, really there aren't many parallels. So do you think it just might be that NASA, like every other bureaucracy, like our own damn federal government, got too big and as a natural course began to sort of draw in and become protected?
Well, if you look at the sociology of this institution, and you understand that in the time frame when this recommendation was made by people of the level of competence and authority of Margaret Mead, who was a very well-known anthropologist of this period, the head of Harvard, the General Counsel for the United Nations. I mean, the names of the people on this Blue Ribbon Commission read like a who's who of American science and industry of the time period, coming out of the very paranoid McCarthy period, where we were afraid of our own shadow and everybody else's shadow. The idea that a bunch of very respected academics would basically say to NASA, look, if you find ETs, you could destroy civilization if you let it out, I think had a profound chilling effect on the scientists and the administrators and the engineers who have been running NASA for the last 30 years.
What about the contention itself, Richard?
Well, that's a separate issue because, remember, politics is mostly perception.
Yes.
Politics is the art of dealing reality, spinning reality, not reality itself. So regardless of whether you now look back in hindsight to say, oh, they were crazy, that, and I want to in a moment get into a couple of other governments that are in the same position, kind of sociologically, that we were 30 years ago,
Right.
and that I've now dealt with. I've had representatives come and stay with us and talk to me about how they would respond to this kind of information, given that their treatment of academics is very different than ours is now. It's more like it was 30 years ago. So we've been doing our homework into why this apparently was taken so seriously. The upshot is that a lot of the people who created NASA, who commissioned this report from, remember, Brookings is one of the world's most prestigious think tanks.
All right, very short on time.
You got to understand that these were well-meaning men, and they were men. They were not women, because we're dealing with the 50s and 60s. And when they got this recommendation, I think, Art, that they felt they were doing a valiant public service in deciding that if they ever found the evidence, they would quietly put it in the drawer.
Richard Hogan, hold on. We'll come right back to you. This is Coast to Coast AM PM, the first hour. I'm Art Bell on the CBC radio network. Stay right there. My guest is Richard Hoagland, author of The Monuments of Mars. And it's fascinating stuff. We're about to get into questions about the moon, so stand by for that. Quick question. I know you've had it before. It came in by fax, Richard. Would you ask your guest if he has any knowledge about the use of Hubble to look at phase on Mars now that the telescope is operating properly?
Technically, it's not really possible. Mars is literally too far away. If you do the numbers, you know, the size of the Hubble mirror is about 100 inches, about 95 inches. You know, we're 50 million miles from Mars at this opposition. You do the standard numbers you find in the astronomy textbook, and what you find is that the face is about 1 pixel, 1 picture element across. You have got to go to Mars to get data.
Got to go. Yeah, I can understand that. 1 pixel is nothing at all to work with.
Nope.
What do you know about the glyphs? GLYPHS, glyphs. Supposedly raised platforms or constructs that appear like alphabetical characters. Have you heard of those, Richard?
Where?
I believe Mars. Or maybe, no, I'm sorry. I think we're now switching to the moon. This is on the moon. Glyphs. Let us switch to the moon. You got a big, I know you were ballyhooing a big announcement about the moon.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, all right. Several nights ago, Thursday of last week, I flew to Ohio State University, and to a literally packed auditorium, about 600 people in Independence Hall. We presented for 4 hours the results of the last year and a half of our Mars mission research. We're going to have to, by the way, change the name of our organization, because Mars is too narrow a focus, and I'm in the process of kind of casting around for something that would be appropriate and would kind of embody the spirit of this inquiry as it broadens its focus. But what we did is we presented a year and a half's worth of work. We had 4 trays of slides. We had 600 people stay 4 hours. They gave me a 5-minute standing ovation at the end. It was quite impressive.
So in other words, you gave them the bulk of your research on Mars to date before you launched into the new stuff.
No, we didn't.
Well, you didn't?
We basically did a quick reprise because everyone has seen the videos, the NASA briefings, the UN briefing and all that. Or if they hadn't, we could point them to it. We basically spent the 4 hours talking about the rather remarkable discoveries we have made on the moon. We have found detailed, 3-dimensional, unquestionable structural artifacts built by some ancient intelligence on the lunar surface.
Good Lord. That's
We have found them on multiple photographs taken by multiple surveyor, lunar orbiter, and Apollo missions.
Richard, that's an incredibly definitive statement. Are you that sure?
Absolutely. Unquestioned. I've never been more sure of anything in my life. And what's really neat, Art, is that we are drowning in data. Whereas with Mars, we've been arguing, you know, almost like the number of angels that can dance on the head of a pin and that classic, you know, thing.
Right.
With 2 photographs and 2 different lighting angles. With the moon, we are data rich. We have literally thousands of pictures. All told, NASA has billions of pictures. Clementine, the recent Pentagon mission, itself took 1.5 million images of the moon.
Wow.
We are stunningly data rich. Haven't you kind of wondered why we have never really seen the moon, Art? Think back. Go tomorrow when it's dawn and you've rested up from the night before. Go to your library and take out a few astronomy texts and begin to look at the section on the Apollo missions to the moon, or the moon in general. What you're going to find, what we have found, what I have puzzled over for the last year and a half, is you're going to find in book after book and text after text and magazine article after magazine article the same tired half dozen pictures of the moon. Millions of pictures, and all we have gotten to look at in the last 25 years since Neil Armstrong set foot on the moon in July of 1969 are basically the same 6 dumb images.
I never thought about it.
And you also have not seen any stunning 3-dimensional flyovers of the moon.
That's for sure.
JPL, Jet Propulsion Laboratory, which is NASA's premier interplanetary, mission central, during the Voyager mission, it brought online, parallel processing machines, supercomputers, and cranes and whatever. And during the Neptune flyby, it gave us within hours, practically, of the photographs from Voyager 2 of Triton, Neptune's large satellite.
Right.
It gave us a beautiful, incredible 3-dimensional flyover of Triton, this planet-sized moon orbiting Neptune at the edge of the solar system. Think back. Have you ever seen a 3D flyover of our own moon?
No.
Have you ever seen, camera hovering, flying, skimming just above the Sea of Tranquility, darting across Copernicus, making a right turn at Archimedes, going through the Alpine Valley, shooting down over the rim of Tycho?
No.
Nothing.
No, you're right. I see them only. I see them only of Earth, Richard. They will show the technology and how it's done on Earth and so on and so on, but never the moon.
Mars, you can see the volcanoes. We have recreated our own version with Sidonia and Dr. Carlotto and the imaging technologies at TASC, the Analytic Sciences Corporation in Reading, with Mark worked there. But think back, we had 3 extraordinary mapping cameras on Apollo 15, 16, 17. These were 24-inch aerial reconnaissance cameras used by the military, to photograph the heck out of Cuba and pinpoint the missile silos, loaded with the best high-resolution aerial film that American technology could provide. They mapped stunning orbit after orbit after orbit after orbit of the moon. And have you seen one frame
That
of
you
those
mentioned.
photographs?
No, now that you mention it. No. So where is all this stuff?
Well, they dare not show it to you because it contains evidence, stunning evidence of artificial structures that they, get to who they might be, have not wanted you to see for 30 years. Brookings has been in full force, and we have been living a lie, Martin. And that's what I showed the crowd at Ohio State University, and that's why they gave me a standing ovation, because we've finally broken the lie.
Richard, the moon is not 1 pixel from Earth.
Nope.
It's a lot closer. Optical telescopes can and do all the time.
You are going to love this.
I guess I will.
One of our Mars mission members, and I'm going to name names and frame numbers tonight so people can begin to begin the crucial verification process.
Good,
Right?
good.
We also had a professional TV crew at Ohio State. We filmed the entire 4 hours. We are in the process of editing the 4 hours. We are hoping to have an online video available so everyone can see these images on their VCR within a matter of weeks, hopefully next 2 or 3 weeks.
When will computer images be available?
Good question. I have not been able to get the data into the hands of our computer people yet, simply because I had to get the stereo, and getting this silently, quietly out of NASA has been like pulling teeth on a mountain lion. While the lion is asleep,
Well,
you don't want to wake up the lion.
So you did do it, though.
We did do it, and that's why we're delaying. If we didn't want to include that, we could probably have this thing ready in a week or so. But I want to wait about 2 or 3 weeks so that Carlotto can take the stereo, the 3-dimensional, 2 different missions 5 different geometries, 3 different lightings that we've got of some of these objects, and literally create 3D so that you will fly around the several thousand-foot high crystalline skyscrapers we have found standing on the moon.
How high, Richard?
Several thousand feet.
Several thousand.
And we have them on photographs from 2 different archives, 3 different technologies, you know, what's it now, 3 different missions, okay? I have to keep track of numbers here.
Yeah.
There is no doubt. The geologists of our team, most of them did not seen what I have been working on because I've been holding it very close to the vest. Some of them were able to assemble at Ohio State on Thursday night. They were absolutely blown away. They were boggled because they know that this is not what the geology of the moon should look like. It just doesn't look like that, boys and girls. And the amazing thing to me, more so than the artifacts, is how they kept the secret. And that to me is going to be the most amazing puzzle of all this, because I can't imagine that we're the first to have seen this. I do know that our technology is a lot better on one desk, all of that has photographs were taken. But I also have now been seeing clues in the Lunar Science Conference papers in the proceedings of the scientists get together every year in Houston, where they gather and present papers on the lunar studies, the rock, the photographs, and all that. I see lots and lots of clues that other scientists have seen some of this before and didn't know what they were seeing. I also know that some scientists had to have known what they were seeing because there's just the fingerprint of their manipulation of the rest of them away. It's like 99% who are honest can be manipulated by the 1% who are not, because 99% believe that everybody is honest and they don't think anybody would ever lie to them in NASA, and that's why this weirdness has succeeded.
Okay, that accounts for this country, but what about other governments, other countries?
Well, that is very speculative territory, Art. For one thing, we're the only nation to send stuff to the moon except for the Russians, right?
Right.
Well,
But we're not certainly the only nation to do careful photographic work.
well, yes, we are.
We are.
Yeah. Now, there is one weirdness in that thing that I must tell you.
What about the British, Richard? They do quite a bit.
The British have
Not individual, but they do a lot of photographic.
No, but we need to be in lunar orbit. Again, to see the level of detail, to know with absolute certainty what you're seeing,
I see.
you have to be in lunar orbit. Now, let me tell you one weirdness that I don't know where to put this on the landing, so I'll just lay out the evidence to decide what it means. About a year ago, the Japanese television network came to us wanting to film the array program vis-a-vis the monument to Mars.
Right.
And negotiating with the Japanese are all undoing.
Yes, I know.
Particularly when you do it like that, long distance, I mean, here in Tokyo.
Oh, I know.
So, I mean, I wasn't so much interested in the money as I was interested in the leverage that having a Japanese television network working with us to give us to answer a major mystery in my own mind. In 1991, one of the major car companies in Japan, I believe it was Honda, put a spacecraft in orbit around Kobe. Were you aware of that?
No, I was not.
Well, see how quietly it occurred?
Honda was
Honda. Yep.
When was this?
In 1991, it was a 2-component mission. One part of the spacecraft went to a high Earth orbit, and the other was placed in lunar orbit. Now, let me pose the question. Have you ever known the Japanese to go anywhere without a moon?
Of course not.
Have you seen any pictures from the Japanese moon orbit mission?
Richard, I didn't know they went.
Well, I did, so I asked long distance my colleagues in Tokyo.
Who launched this thing?
The Japanese space agency, I think that's what it's called, ISA.
Huh.
But it was primarily, remember, the corporations over there that drive that train, right? Shimizu is planning an orbital building and a Japanese moon base.
Are they really?
Yep.
When did they project it?
Well, they're fuzzy on the dates, and I now know why, all right? Because the politics aren't good.
I see.
Anyway, so I am interested in getting a hold of these pictures that I proposed suppose, imagine, had been taken by the Japanese mission, right?
Of course.
So rather than the normal international exchange of dollars for rights and all that, I basically propose we do this for a very modest amount, but I want access to the Japanese lunar picture. Okay?
Yes.
Because I'm beginning to build a data file, and I'm trying to get a handle on what in the world we got to know more about.
What do you get back? Still Saudi Arabians on?
How much time we got?
Yeah, where are
All right. The day after I sent the text, remember we were dealing with facts between the U.S. and Tokyo. We're dealing into tomorrow.
Yes.
Across the international date line, it was already tomorrow. So the fact means that you're weird out. We're trying to do this. Literally, within hours of that, my contact and that morning, which is now Japanese
Oh, my.
within hours. Further, it stated that it only took 2 pictures, neither of which was usable.
Yeah, right.
I hate to say they are, but I think the fix is in.
The